Chevy Suburban is the longest SUV in the world, covering a remarkable 5.7 meters. It's also the originator of the entire SUV genre.
It really is sort of the grandfather of the idea, and it took a long time for them to really catch on.
In today's car world, many crossover SUVs are built using a unibody construction technique. But not the Suburban. It still harkens back to a different era because it relies on a ladder-style frame.
Body-on-frame construction is largely gone from the auto industry, and what it describes is all of the mechanical bits are on this frame, and the body is merely something that's plunked on top of it. Not the case with Suburban. You can pull the entire body off, sit in the seat, drive it down the street, and it's fully functional.
The body-on-frame construction technique goes back to the very beginning of the Suburban story. Yet it takes a very long time and 7 different generations for the machine to truly hit its stride.
So this is the generation that ran from 1973 through 1990. So we're well into what we would call the modern full-size SUV. It's got 4 doors now instead of 3, so now everybody can easily get in and out of it.
This is the new Suburban by Chevrolet, station wagon styling on a tough truck chassis. It has fresh new appearance and convenience this year.
For the first 6 generations of the machine, customers had to choose rear seats as an option from the factory. But the 7th gen changes that, thanks to something we take for granted today: folding seats.
The Super Wagon that seats up to 9 when all seats are ordered. New for $79, an optional quick-release rear seat.
The 2nd row seat can fold down flat, and then the 3rd row seat is completely removable. Do I want to carry people, or do I want to carry cargo, or do I want to carry a few people and a lot of cargo?
The 7th gen machine will stay in production for an unprecedented 19 years.
Suburban sort of provided the modern SUV formula as we know it today. For a long time, SUVs only had 2 doors, so it didn't really quite work for the family. Suburban was the only one that offered the 4 doors, and that sort of was a game changer once smaller SUVs picked up on that formula. That's what sort of led to the explosion in the 90s for SUV sales.
These days, General Motors' full-size SUVs are so successful that if they were spun off as their own automotive company, they'd be the size of a Fortune 500 brand all by themselves.
The Suburban is essentially the same vehicle today that it was in the 1930s. It's the same shape, it's the same very basic design. The purpose is a little different these days. Obviously, the technology is a lot better, it's more powerful, it's safer, but it's still a Suburban.
America's a big country, and there's plenty of room in most of America for the Suburban. So that's what people want. They want a big, comfortable SUV. And that's sort of what American cars used to be. The Suburban sort of carries that on into the 21st century.
The nameplate has stood the test of time, and so do the machines.
The average is 11 to 12 years, and that's the average age. So that means there are many that are much older than that out there on the road.
Infusing decade-plus ruggedness starts on the chassis line, where craftspeople bolt the upper control arms on, add the body mounts, exhaust system, and the rear axle. Then the disc brakes are tightened in place, and shock absorbers go on. Finally, workers swing the drive shaft into place and attach it to the rear differential. Before the entire chassis heads to a very special station called the rollover cell, where it's a quick flip in preparation for a big engine.
After we complete what we call the rollover, we put some brake lines and some other brackets in preparation to receive the engine and the transmission.
There's no time for the timid at the engine install station. Workers get just one shot to drop the power plant into place correctly.
We have two chains, one that guides for the engine, one that guides the frame. We lift it, set it, connect the drive shaft, set the engine down, slide in the prod shaft into the front axle, secure the engine over here and take the brackets off.
It's a high-pressured spot where every 60 seconds, a fully dressed engine is ready to go.
Timing and actually aiming. When he's picking it up, he's got to sling it in, get it on that one spot. Now, a lot of times you can't always see it, but just guiding it down without damaging the oil filter. When I first got this team, it actually took me a couple of weeks to really get the job down and comfortable with it.
The engine drop station moves fast, yet the friendships around here are lengthy.
Been here for 5 years now. I got a great team. Every day we come in, we make jokes, basically just, hey, hanging out with the guys. A lot of times we usually end up going to see movies together, we'll go hang out. We always see each other a lot.
Further down the line, they install the radiator and add a new set of wheels. Finally, when a powertrain sub-assembly is completed, it's sent to the main line.
In here, you have one of the main attractions in the assembly process, which is the body marriage. The product that we have is a body on frame. So in here, you can see what it means. The body or the main cabin comes on top of the frame.
Like everything else inside of the Arlington plant, the body drop is fast. It takes less than a minute to merge a nearly completed interior with the mechanicals.
After the body is set into the frame, that is almost fully complete.
Front fenders are installed. The bonnet is added. And then it's time for just a little bit of juice.
You gotta make of manufacturing one of your competitive advantages. When it comes into the mass production and the volume that we are producing, more than 300,000 units a year, one truck every minute, it requires a perfect coordination and calibration of the tools, the equipment, and the manpower that we use.
It's taken 24 hours for the Arlington team to transform metal blanks into a finished machine.
We are at the end of the assembly process. This is what we call the shipping line. It goes through a series of tests, make sure that everything is properly set, fit, tightened, connected. Then we have what we call the care line. And in here we have a group of people inspecting, making sure that everything was okay to the eyes of the customer.
At this point, the majority of Suburbans are ready to head to customers. But every day, a select few take a different journey.
We have a very solid process in place. But we produce so many units and team members, they have 5-10 seconds to do any element of the truck. But in mass production, you gotta make sure that you don't take any chances.
10 finished machines per day are sent to the GCA, or Global Customer Audit Center.
We evaluate every 10 vehicles per day, really intense to see how our vehicles are coming out.
Next, machines head to a care line, where they get a white glove treatment as workers ensure everything is built properly. Then each vehicle heads to a rolling road.
The DVT, Dynamic Vehicle Test, where we test our vehicles on a dyno machine and we program it to make sure everything's working correctly.
Finally, new machines spend 8 minutes inside of an intense water test to check for leaks. Then it's time for a little rattle and roll.
We shake several vehicles every day to ensure that everything is put together correctly, no extra rattles or noises. One of the things that bothers me is when my car rattles, so try to make sure that we're not giving customers any rattling cars.
The goal of auditing the machines is to help the factory keep tabs on the quality level of the builds. It's like an in-house focus group to ensure perfection.
I want to make sure they get the best vehicle that we can build for them. You know, they're going to have their families in these cars every day, and I want to make sure their families are safe. Everybody's family is important, just like mine is. Anybody that buys our product deserves to get a well-built vehicle, a safe vehicle. I try to tell everybody that every day, you know, build a vehicle and inspect a vehicle like it's your own.
Over 65% of all Suburbans leaving the Arlington plant are equipped with the top LTZ package, which features magnetic ride control, upgraded wheels, daytime running lights, 12-way heated seats, and a power-folding third row. Yet perhaps the hottest variant is the completely blacked-out Midnight Edition.
They drive really well. They carry so much stuff. There are so many insider secrets about what it's like to live with a Suburban that you don't really understand how great this vehicle is until you have one.
The Suburban's really grown and changed over the years as the buyer has changed. Originally they were farm implements, and now they're passenger vehicles. The Suburban of today drives much more like a car, and it's a balance that Chevrolet has had to figure out because it's still built on a truck frame.
Suburbans are the modern Cadillacs of the road, and by that I mean 1950s Cadillacs. The biggest, most comfortable cars that you can drive mile after mile after mile and never get tired.
The Suburban's big, and it doesn't try to hide it with its design. It's proud of how big it is, and it looks it, and it's imposing, and it makes a statement. That's sort of a uniquely American thing.
An all-American sensibility that's continued to stand out because it's different from anything else.
The Suburban does something that other vehicles don't. The vast majority of crossover SUVs on the market are 5-passenger. The Suburban has 7 seats, and 7 seats you can actually use.
There are precious few vehicles that actually fit modern kids. And the kids aren't different than they used to be, but the stuff that goes along with them. These huge car seats, these huge strollers, all this stuff doesn't fit in most cars.
There are smaller vehicles that offer a third row, but you can only put children back there. A 7-seat Suburban, you can put full-size adults or full-size teenagers if you've got a big family in the third row of it.
The best thing about a Suburban is the space inside. You don't have to organize any of your junk. You can just throw it in the back and forget about it, and it'll be there when you get there.
In an age of downsizing, the Suburban remains the one machine that can accommodate up to 7 passengers and their gear.
You can say, oh, I can get a pickup truck to tow. Well, yes, but your pickup truck won't haul 7 people. There's certain things that a Suburban does that other vehicles don't. And it's only a certain market, but in that market, it's the king.
Throughout the generations, at least the last 3 or 4, the formula is pretty much the same. It's a full 4 doors with a hatch, wagon shape, 4-wheel drive capability, off-road capability, and body on frame.
Suburban started to become minivan replacements. The minivan was uncool. That's what your parents drove, but big trucky SUVs were cool, and the Suburban could hold 7 people, which is almost as much as a minivan. So it starts out as a minivan replacement, and it's kind of the only game in town. So for a while, it's really got that cornered. These days, everybody's got an SUV of every size for every purpose. So the Suburban doesn't dominate the entire SUV market like it once did, but it's still a very important product in its own right.
The market for gigantic V8-powered, body-on-frame, 3-row SUVs might be dwindling. Yet the fact that Chevy's still in the game shows there's money to be made and families who need the space.
It's the type of vehicle that does it all. And yet, we all don't look at it as a mommy-mobile or a soccer mom-mobile. We look at it as, oh wow, here's a fleet of black Suburbans, someone important's coming. You look baller pulling up in a Suburban. You look badass.
They're quiet, you sit really high. It's very isolated, and you have this great V8 under the hood that has plenty of power. So the Suburban can move along pretty well.
It still drives more like a truck than any other SUV out there, but it doesn't drive like a pickup truck. It kind of exists in its own space, somewhere between crossover, car, and full-on pickup truck. In the case of the Suburban, it does the job it needs to do. No one is drag racing Suburbans. It has the power that it needs and the torque that it needs to tow, to haul, and to get it down the road safely and comfortably. It's not trying to be a sports car.
It's a mega-sized machine that helps define the SUV genre. Along the way, it becomes the longest continuously produced vehicle in the entire car industry. And it's the only SUV built in the heart of Texas. The Chevrolet Suburban, the original sport utility vehicle.
When I see one anywhere in the world, I can say, that's made in Arlington for sure, and I know the guys that they helped to put it together.
I wouldn't want to work anywhere else. The people I work with have a lot of pride, they love what they do, and we have fun. We really do try to have a good time when we're building these vehicles.
When I see a vehicle going down the road, it just gives me a warm and fuzzy feel that I had a part in building that truck. The same as if you would see your child playing football or something, they do a touchdown. I have that same feeling. I'm just filled with pride that I'm a part of that event.